Hello, so Mag's here again. I thought we'd make a little board book today. I've made this one from scratch. I've got a bit obsessed with board books at the moment. Kim Collister did little board books for a 100-day project this year, and they're absolutely brilliant and I love them. So I decided I'd do a couple. I had one around and about this size already that was a children's book, which I recycled. But you don't very often find them this size. And I love little miniature things, so I decided I'd try and make one. This is the second one I've made, and I learnt as I went along. So I'll tell you what I learnt as I went along. And then I've also now developed a different way of making them. And I made this one with an alternative method. So this has got more of an open spine. It isn't covered. So I'll show you this in a different video. But I'll show you how I did this one first. And then you can decide later which you prefer when you've watched both videos, if you want to watch both videos. So it's just got some printables and some scraps of paper in this one, and some paper artsy stamps and some matte coloured papers and some more stamps there for paper artsy. Some are jelly prints, some are just scraps. These printables are from Art House Whimsy and they're absolutely gorgeous. This little book reminds me a lot of the Sunny Smiles books we used to get when we were children. I don't know, I think they were to raise money for Bernardo's, but children's homes, but I'm not entirely sure. I know some people used to bring them to school and we used to pay, I think it was a penny or twopence, and we'd get a little picture of a child. It was to raise money, and they were called Sunny Smiles, but I'll have to look into it. But anyway, that was the general sort of, that's what it reminds me of. So we'll set that aside. Now, I've got my supplies handy. I started off with the paper I'm going to use, which is an old music book, music pages. A friend gave me an absolute box full that had been stored in a shed, and they were very, very fusty, quite damp. So I went through them and got the best out. The ones that weren't salvageable, I recycled. But a lot of them, they've been airing now for about 2 years, and they don't smell anymore. They've got fresh air into them, and they smell of old paper, but not fusty anymore. And they're nice and dry and everything. So I'm using those as the base for my pages. I did with this. You'll see on the back, it's music paper. And you'll probably cover them all. But the thing is, you get a uniform look if you use all the same paper and it's the same back and front. It's got a similar colour. So that's my paper. The grey board I'm using is just some I'm recycling, some packaging my husband had. Paper Artsy do a nice grey board, which is white on one side, grey on the other. You could use that as well. And I've cut these squares, which are 9 centimetres by 9 centimetres. 9 by 9. And I've cut 6 of those. I'm going to have 6 pages in this little book. This one has that's 6 pages, and I think it's about right. So I've cut 6 of those. Now, I haven't got a guillotine that's got precise measurements on it. I've just got a paper cutter, so I've done them as near as possible to 9 by 9 that I can. There's a slight fluctuation because my paper cutter's getting quite old. 1/4 millimetre out, I'm not that fussy. So what I do, I line them up in pairs and make sure that they're as near as they possibly can, the same size. So I might be 1/2 millimetre or 1/4 millimetre out, but it's it's not rocket science. We're not going to cure diseases with it. So I'm using Yoo-Hoo glue stick because it's nice and easy. You could use PVA, but I find sometimes the paper bubbles a bit more with the PVA, with the wet glue. So I think this is quite adequate for the base layers. When we come to the binding, I'll use PVA because it's stronger and it's better. So we've got our two, this will be one set of pages. So get rid of one, and I'm going to put lots of glue onto, I think I'm in the shot, lots of glue on here. Concentrating on the edges and the corners, but making sure there's lots on there. We're in shot, so, and then I'm going to line it up with the edge of the paper because I know this is a straight line because this is the edge of the paper. So I'm going to go there. So I've got the straight edge of the grey board is lined up with the straight edge of the paper. I've also got, when I find them, two spacers. This is two offcuts of the same grey board. This grey board is about, let me just remeasure it. It's about, let's see, 2 millimeters thick. And because I've got two pages next to one another, I'm going to put two pieces together and use those as spacers. And then I'm going to glue my next piece down there, making sure that they are straight, top and bottom, so it runs in a line. So I'll glue that one down now. Just get it off the edge a little bit. Don't forget the spacers. These are quite important. Now, with this music paper, it's quite easy because with the score that's on here, it's got lines. And I know this edge went along that line, so this will do the same. There we are. So now I'm going to just cut straight along. This is why you see it's important that your pages line up. I'll keep that for the back. This first time that I cover it, I do trim the edges all the way around. I'll show you a little bit of a trick when we do cover the back. And you can keep these for making masterboards or adding into frames and things. So you see, that's our first lot of pages. Just spend a bit of time making sure it's well and truly pressed down everywhere. I would normally spend a bit more time pressing and doing with my bone folder, but because we want to get on, I will go a little bit faster. I'll just get that glue off there. Now, which bit of this do I want? Doesn't really matter which I have. So, now this one, we're going to cover this side. There's a bit of a trick I've learnt, that at this stage I fold my pages and line the edges up like that and crease, so that all my, this open edge and those two are all lined up, and I crease it. This is the voice of experience. because I've done a couple, and when I've folded them and the glue hasn't been quite stuck, it's moved. So I need it to have the ability to move a little bit. I'll show you in a minute what I mean. So now we're going to do the other side. So we're going to put glue all the way here. Again, making sure we've got plenty on the corners. And again on this side. Just checking we're in shot. Alright. Put my lid on and it doesn't dry out. And then we're going to go, make sure it's the right way up, and I'm going to go with my edge about 1 centimetre in. And you'll understand why in a minute. It depends how fragile your papers are. You can run your bone folder down there, but if they're old papers like this, they're sometimes a little bit fragile and it'll tear. I'm then going to cut this bit off, but I'm leaving a little bit at each end, which will be apparent in a minute. I'll trim the sides. Level. You can usually feel when you're against the cardboard and it'll guide your scissors along. I love little bits like this because I can stamp words on those. They're absolutely brilliant. And even this is just a nice little embellishment, or part of, will be part of. So we've already folded it this way. So we're going to do that again. And we're going to fold it right round and we're going to tap it. This makes the bottom edge splay out slightly. But it also makes sure that the paper, if it moves, still covers the grey board. So now we can trim the edges off. As I say, I did this once and the paper moved and then I was left with a grey edge, which I didn't want. Right, so we've got, which way up are we? That way. So we've got one of what I call signatures for our little book. I've also created previously another two to get them the right way up. You can usually tell because the treble clef is the right way up, which is this one, and the writing. So that's that way up, that way up. There's our treble clef on here, there. So that's the right way up. Now, when I get to this stage, I then tap them and make sure all the pages are equal and more or less within 1 millimetre the same size. Because you do get a little bit of variegations by the time you've put your papers on and everything else. So I'll line this one up and see where we are. And you see we have a little bit of a discrepancy there. So I'll tap all my pages, make sure the sides and the bottoms are all level. And then I'll mark and trim this little bit off. The easiest way to do, because I know those first two signatures are correct, I'll take one of those out, tap that down, open one page up, tap it again to make sure it's in the right place, couple of bulldog clips, hold everything in place, and then I just trim off with my scissors, trim off the excess. These are or were hairdressing scissors, so they're nice and sharp. And it's just a little bit that needs to be trimmed off sometimes, but it just equals it up. This isn't cutting as easy as it did last time. That's it. So that's straight. Clips off again. The other one round. Tap it again. Bulldog clips back on. You will probably get this a lot better if you're not rushing like me to try and make it not too long a video. And again, I'm going to trim this bit off because it's just a bit too long. I think when I was folding one of my first signatures, I must have been a bit out with it. So, but as I say, it's not rocket science. It doesn't have to be to the nth of a millimetre. Right, so we've now got our 3 signatures, right way round. Yeah, that's the right way round. And they all line up there, they all line up there, and they all line up there. So, the most important thing is to get this all lined up. So, as I say, I just keep tapping till it lines up. And then I put a couple of bulldog clips on to hold it. There. You want to have access to your spine. That's the most important bit. Yeah. And then I've kept various bits of the music paper that were left. Quite like that. From there. Yeah, I think I like that. Yes, so I don't need all of that, so I'm going to trim that bit off. And because I like this going there, it probably get covered up, but at the moment I quite like it there. So I'm going to fold this on this black line. If you can see that. Yeah, there we are. This bit is, let's see how wide is this? Just over 5.5 centimetres wide. So now I'm going to line that up so the Oxford music is about the middle way of my book, you see. And I'm going to glue that on with PVA, which I will do first. I might just trim it down a little bit more so it's a little bit easier to deal with. That's about the middle. Just get a bit more of the excess out of the way. And then we'll put glue. Of course, I had to get a blob of glue stuck in there. Yeah, so we're about here. And you want a reasonable amount, because you want it to well and truly stick. So I smear it out with my finger. And I'm going to go a little bit onto the next bit. Just so I know it's going to be into that crease. Right, and then we're going to position our Oxford music. Do it so you can see. Fairly central. and that crease is on the crease of the book. Then we're going to press it down. Hopefully our spine is still level. I can just fold it back and make sure. Yeah, it is. Right, I'm now going to put quite a liberal amount of glue on here. And up here. Right, and I'm just going to smear it again with my finger. Make sure every single little bit is covered. I don't want any gaps. I'm going to put a little bit on there as well. Right, so you can see it's all over that paper. Going to then wrap that round and press that down so that it comes into contact with all those 3 signatures there. Then I'm going to go round onto the back and press. So we should have a nice even I always give it a bang to make sure it comes into contact with it. Press and press and press. Right, and then I'm going to put my bulldog clips back on again. In fact, I'll put one there and we'll put one here. Like that. And I'll leave that to dry. Once it's dry, we'll come back. Right, so we're back. It's not quite dry, but it's not far off. But I'm just going to show you how I trim this bit off, because it can be a bit difficult to negotiate. I get my little embroidery scissors and I just cut to the top of the signatures on the spine. So you get a flap there, a flap there and a flap there. It's then easy just to press it over and press it in. When you press that one in, then that lets you just get your scissors there and trim that off. Do the same again. We just put our scissors in, trim it off, and then trim that off. You can then neaten it up if you want. If it's a bit rough, I sometimes just get a sanding block and just sand it a little bit to sand the excess off, or you can go in again with your scissors and just, it's easier to do it from the top, and just trim that bit off so it's nice and neat. So move those out of their way. So we've got our little book. It's just the basis for a book, and all these pages will probably be covered with other papers, but if any areas do show, it doesn't matter, you've got something interesting, you've got some book pages. So that's the back one. This is where the middle one is attached to the piece that wraps round. Come here, get over. Again, that's where it's attached in. I won't open it too widely because the glue isn't quite set, but you can see it all blends in because it's all the same paper. And then that's the front one. When I've decorated it all, I do, because the grey board is grey, I just get a little makeup sponge, my Archival ink vintage photo, it's the distress one, so it's a permanent one, and because I always do mostly vintage projects, I'll just ink the grey board up and on all the edges. I'll probably do it again once I've decorated the pages, but it just makes them blend in. I do also do all the edges quite often before I decorate them, and then sometimes if you can't get in, it's already done for you if you forget. So I hope you like that. I hope you give it a go, and if you watch out on the Paper Artsy blog in the next few days, you may see a project something similar to that. So that's a bit of a sneaky peek. Don't tell anybody that I told you. But I will put this away now until it is completely and utterly dry. I'll just put my bulldog clip round it and leave it to dry. I'll just show you that one again. And if you do get any of your pages, middle pages, it's usually the middle one that wants to come out if it is going to. If you have a problem, just put a little bit of glue in there, close it up, let it set, and it's sorted. This one wasn't quite glued in enough, so I went back again and put more glue in. So I'll just put that one with that one. And there we are. That's the finished project.